I'm back with some more Ramona. Today we're going to start reading chapter 7. It's called The Day Things Went Wrong. What do you think is going to happen? Can you think of anything that could go wrong for Ramona at school? Make your predictions. I hope it's not too bad. Ramona's been doing really well lately. Let's see what happens. Ramona's day was off to a promising start for 2 reasons, both of which proved she was growing up. First of all, she had a loose tooth, a very loose tooth, a tooth that waggled back and forth with only a little help from her tongue. It was probably the loosest tooth in the morning kindergarten, which meant that the tooth fairy would finally pay a visit to Ramona before long. Ramona had her suspicions about the tooth fairy. She had seen Beezus search under her pillow in the morning after losing a tooth and then call out, "Daddy, my tooth is still here. The tooth fairy forgot to come." "That's funny," Mr. Quimby would answer. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I looked every place for the dime." "Let me look," was always Mr. Quimby's suggestion, and somehow he could always find the tooth fairy's dime when Beezus could not. Now Ramona's turn would come. She planned to stay awake and trap the tooth fairy to make sure it was real. Not only did Ramona have a loose tooth to make her feel that she was finally beginning to grow up, she was going to get to walk to school all by herself. At last! Howie was home with a cold, and her mother had to drive Beezus downtown for an early dental appointment. "Now, Ramona," said Mrs. Quimby as she put on her coat, "I'm going to trust you to stay all by yourself for a little while before you start school. Do you think you can be a good girl?" "Of course, Mama," said Ramona, who felt she was always a good girl. "Now, be sure to watch the clock," said Mrs. Quimby, "and leave for school at exactly 8:15. "Yes, Mama." "And look both ways before you cross the street." "Yes, Mama." Mrs. Quimby kissed Ramona goodbye, and "be sure to close the door behind you when you leave." "Yes, Mama," said Ramona. She could not see why her mother was so nervous. Are you starting to think of an idea of what could go wrong? Ramona's on her own. She has to watch the clock all by herself and know what time to leave for school, and just to walk to school all by herself. I think something could go wrong. When Mrs. Quimby and Beezus had gone, Ramona sat down at the kitchen table to wiggle her tooth and watch the clock. The little hand was at 8. The big hand was at 1. Ramona wiggled her tooth with her finger, and then she wiggled it with her tongue, back and forth, back and forth. The big hand crept onto the 2. Ramona took hold of her tooth with her fingers, but as much as she longed to surprise her mother and pull it out, she was too scared. She went back to just wiggling. The big hand moved slowly to the 3. Ramona continued to sit on the chair, wiggling her tooth and being a very good girl as she promised. The big hand crawled along to the 4. When it reached the 5, Ramona knew that it would be 8:15 and time to go to school. A quarter was 25 cents. Therefore, 8:15 was 25 minutes after 8. She had figured that out all by herself. I don't think that is correct. Ramona might have her telling time a little mixed up. It's not the same as money. At last, the big hand crawled to the 5. Ramona slid off her chair and slammed the door behind her as she started off to go to school. So far, so good, but as soon as Ramona reached the sidewalk, she realized something had gone wrong. In a moment, she understood what it was. The street was too quiet. No one else was walking to school. Ramona stopped in confusion. Maybe she was mixed up. Maybe today was really Saturday. Maybe her mother forgot to look at the calendar. No, it could not be Saturday because yesterday was Sunday. Besides, there was Henry Huggins' dog Ribsy trotting along the street on his way home from bringing Henry to school. Today really was a school day because Ribsy followed Henry to school every morning. Maybe the clock was wrong. In a panic, Ramona began to run. Miss Binny would not like her to be late for school. She did manage to slow down and look both ways before she crossed the street. But when she saw that Henry was not guarding his usual intersection, she knew that the traffic boys had gone in and she was later than she thought. She ran across the kindergarten playground and then stopped. The door of the kindergarten was shut. Miss Binny had started school without her. Ramona stood puffing a moment, trying to catch her breath. Of course, she could not expect Miss Binny to wait for her when she was late, but she could not help wishing that her teacher had missed her so much that she would say, "Class, let's wait for Ramona. Kindergarten isn't any fun without Ramona." When Ramona caught her breath, she knew what she should do. She knocked and she waited for the door monitor to open the door. The monitor turned out to be Susan, who said accusingly, "You're late." "Never mind, Susan," said Miss Binny, who was standing in front of the class holding a brown paper sack with a big T printed on it. "What happened, Ramona?" "I don't know," Ramona was forced to admit. "I left at 8:15 like my mother told me." Miss Binny smiled and said, "Next time try to walk a little faster," before she continued where she left off. "Now, who can guess what I have in this big bag with the letter T printed on it? Remember, it is something that begins with a T. Who can tell me how T sounds?" "Tick, tick, 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 tick," ticked the kindergarten. "Good," said Miss Binny. "Davy, what do you think's in my bag?" Miss Binny was inclined to bear down on the first letters of words now that the class was working on the sounds that they made. "Caterpillars?" said Davy hopefully. He rarely got anything right, but he kept trying. "No, Davy, caterpillars begins with C. K, 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 k. What I have in this bag begins with T. T, 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 t." Davy was crestfallen. He had been so sure that caterpillar started with a T. T, 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 t. The class ticked quietly while it thought. "TV?" someone suggested. TV began with T, but it was not in the bag. T, 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 t. "Tadpoles?" Wrong. T, t, teeter-totter? Wrong again. How could a teeter-totter fit in a paper bag? T, 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 t. Ramona ticked to herself as she wiggled her tooth with her fingers. "Tooth?" she suggested. "Tooth is a good T word, Ramona," said Miss Binny, "but it is not what I have in my bag." Ramona was so pleased by Miss Binny's compliment that she wiggled her tooth even harder and suddenly found it in her hand. A strange taste filled her mouth. Ramona stared at her little tooth. She was astonished to discover that one end was bloody. "Miss Binny," she cried without raising her hand, "my tooth came out." Someone had lost a tooth. The kindergarten began to crowd around Ramona. "Seats, please, boys and girls," said Miss Binny. "Ramona, you may go rinse your mouth, and then you may show us your tooth." Ramona did as she was told, and when she held up her tooth for all to admire, Miss Binny said, "Tooth, t, 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 t." When Ramona pulled down her lip to show the hole where her tooth had been, Miss Binny did not say anything because the class was working on T, and hole did not begin with T. It turned out that Miss Binny had a t, 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 tiger, stuffed, of course, in the bag. We're going to stop there for now, and we'll read the second half very soon. So far, one bad thing happened to Ramona, right? She was late for school. But now something good happened to her. Her tooth fell out. So I wonder why this day is so bad. I wonder if anything else bad will happen. What do you think? We'll read the second half of this chapter very soon. Look for it on my YouTube channel. Bye for now.